Welcome to Wildspire. You get to be a fly on the wall for my intimate conversations with entrepreneurs who are changing the world. I'm your host, Stephanie Benedetto, coach, storyteller, and unmarketer at The Awakened Business, helping coaches and change-making entrepreneurs unleash their inspired message and share it with playful unmarketing. I'll ask curious questions and explore uncharted waters with my guest today. Anything can happen when we step into the unknown of infinite creativity, and that's where we're going to play. What can I tell you about my guest today? Well, since he happens to be my ex-husband, probably more than he would want you to know. Jeff Padovani is one of the most charming and charismatic guys you'll ever meet, and he never fails to get me laughing. He's a brilliant songwriter, singer, and guitarist. Now, we don't get into that in today's conversation, but be sure to look him up on SoundCloud. It's thanks to Jeff that I became an accidental entrepreneur. He introduced me to Tony Robbins, set me on the personal empowerment path, and made me a stepmom to his two amazing sons. Together, we started multiple businesses featuring the Steph and Jeff Show, and I'm so blessed that we've remained friends. Here's what Jeff is up to these days. Jeff's specialty as a coach is helping you optimize your life. He's a certified NLP coach, timeline therapy practitioner, and certified tiny habits coach. Jeff has built 3 successful businesses from scratch and became one of the top marketing resources in his industry. But what he really loves is the business of people. He's worked with individuals, solopreneurs, and multi-million-dollar businesses and loves to help people take control of their lives. Jeff's mission is to help you regret-proof your life by helping you create a plan and committing to making it happen. Life can be relentless. Your feelings of isolation and failure don't have to be. It's time to get clear about your purpose, live in your truth, and create your future. Join me for a playfully provocative conversation with Jeff Padovani. Hey, Jeff. Welcome to Wildspire.
Hello, Stephanie. Happy to be here.
You are on my turf now.
Oh my God.
Just kidding. So I feel compelled. What do you think? Shall we tell people a little bit about our connection and our relationship?
You mean it isn't just a coincidence that our names might sound similar or anything like that?
Yeah.
I'm perfectly cool with that.
Cool. So just to get you, just to give you a little bit of background, Jeff and I were married for 17, well, technically 19 years, but 17 of which we lived together and
lived for like 22 years, right?
We did. Yes.
Nice. Okay.
Yes, we did. Up until the past couple of years. And as you can see, we're still on speaking terms. And in fact, he is one of my favorite humans, actually. And
so are you.
And I'm really blessed and grateful that we get to continue to be in each other's lives. And Jeff and I have had multiple businesses together. So we're no stranger to conversations around business and coaching and psychology. Jeff, I think, he both got me into entrepreneurship and introduced me to neuro-linguistic programming way back in the day.
And you introduced me to actually getting things done.
Yes, I think that was part of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy to have you here to explore what you're up to these days. So, like, what is most inspiring for you recently?
I think, years we spent coaching businesses and coaching people in business. And there was always, I love business, absolutely. And I love seeing businesses grow. But there was always a bit of a frustration in it because unless someone really changes their thinking a little bit, they're going to pretty much keep on the same path they're on. We experienced this. We would give them a bunch of tips on how they could up their game. And there'd be part of you that would know that they're not going to do any of this. They just weren't buying into it completely, or they hadn't really changed to make a shift. Their mindset wasn't maybe open to it. So it was nice to kind of move on from that to coaching people and really helping them optimize themselves. I really, as you know, I've been really into habit change, which is red hot out there right now. It's obviously a very hot topic for a reason, because we do walk around in a trance all day. So why don't we make that trance work for us?
So When you say optimize yourself, what does that mean? Like, why do I need to optimize myself?
Well, think about it this way. We update our tech all the time, right? Our phone tells us to update it, our computer, but we don't really think about updating our beliefs. And, our beliefs are really controlling our lives. So would you like to be a little happier? Would you like to be maybe a little healthier? Am I telling you you need to optimize? No, absolutely not. That's a choice individuals make. But most of us have this picture of who we think we are, but then we also have this picture of who we think we're capable of being. And we walk around with this gap, and that gap creates a lot of shame and desire and unfulfilled desire, I should say. So closing that gap just even a little bit can really make your life enhanced. You can feel enhanced. You can be happier. You can be healthier. Small actions. So when I talk about optimizations, I'm talking not about, go big or go home. Not that I have any problem with that. It's really about little small measurements of movement that can have a dramatic impact. That little ripple in the pond that has giant impact.
Okay, cool. So I'm on board with that. I just felt a little compelled to be devil's advocate-y in there for a bit.
No less. So go ahead.
I don't always do that, but sometimes it rears its head. So in that sense, optimizing myself, just being a little happier, being a little healthier, right, feeling a little better, having a nicer life. That sounds nice. That sounds like something that I would like to do too.
Sure.
So you said that there's this gap between who we are and who we think we could be.
Right.
I'm really intrigued by that because I ask myself the question, who am I? And sometimes it seems like I am this person, or I have an experience of myself as being really different than I think I am, right? So I might have an old story about, let's just say, feeling insecure in social situations when I don't know people, or having a hard time in a situation where I have to confront someone and I think they might be upset with me. Okay, so that's my story. Right. But then I also have experiences where, for example, I've seen myself in conversations and coaching with clients where I am deliberately provocative and maybe even irritating to people. And I know I'm doing it. And I'm like, I can't believe it. If I start thinking about it or afterward, I'm like, I can't believe I did that. But it felt like the right thing to do. So who am I? Like, what's the real me and all that? What's your take on that?
Well, I like the fact, like you said, provoking someone, because, generally we don't move from that place we're at unless there is some kind of pain, some kind of irritation. I mean, if you were the Dalai Lama or whatever sitting there and everything is just, your mindset is like, I'm not attached to anything and I'm just so peaceful, I guess you probably wouldn't feel any need to maybe make some changes. But I think even the Dalai Lama probably is like, I feel a little anxiety. Maybe he's not going to talk about that publicly. I don't know. I might want to work on that because your brain, your thoughts are going wild a lot of times. We can calm them down by learning how to be more in the moment and not get sucked into the stories. But who are you, Stephanie?
I was going to say, you didn't really answer my question.
Who are you?
Well, it's an unanswerable question probably, but right. I'm just interested, like, what do you see in that? Like, when you think of yourself as you are now and you think of Jeff's future self, who you think you could be or who you aspire to be,
right? What's
your take on your identity, or like, how do you see that?
Okay, well, I think a lot of it is, like you said earlier, the stories we tell ourselves. We have these old stories because our subconscious is running the show so much of the day. So much of it, we're not actually conscious. It's kind of like the classics. You're driving to work or driving home and you're kind of lost in an old argument or a fantasy or a thought, but you somehow magically arrive home without a body count of running people over, hopefully. And because we're living in this subconscious state almost all the time. So in a sense, a lot of that subconscious really, it is real to your body, obviously, because your body doesn't know the difference.
Well, tell me about that. What do you mean my body doesn't know the difference?
Your body doesn't know the difference. So a perfect example, they've done a lot of studies of mental rehearsal. and give that as an example. There was a study done in Chicago with their basketball team where this behavioral scientist split the basketball team up into 3 groups. So the first group, this is a 30-day experiment. For 1 hour every day, they just did free throws. 1 hour every day, free throws. The second group sat on the bench and just thought about doing free throws. That's it. They just focused on doing free throws, swish, making it, nothing but net, just thought about it for 30 days. The third group, whatever, they played with their phones. They didn't do anything. But by the end of that, the fascinating outcome was, I believe it was 24% improvement with the group that practiced throwing it, which makes sense. But the group that sat on the bench that never touched a basketball improved by 23%. So your body, your neurology is following what you're thinking. And physically, you can actually improve just by thinking about improving, which is kind of mind-blowing. But again, your subconscious doesn't really know the difference. Your conscious knows, but we live in our subconscious so much, and our body follows that because that's what runs our body, the subconscious. Does that answer your question?
I think so. I interjected my other question and I interrupted it with this question. I think I was asking you about this, how you're seeing the stories you tell, the beliefs, the unconscious, and then going to, because I'm really curious about this. And, we haven't really talked about this in depth. I want to know why this is valuable to you, this closing the gap.
Okay. Well, I guess going back to the whole story thing is actually starting to actively take some control back from your subconscious by introducing the story you want into your head. Your conscious brain is like this mouse driving an elephant, where the elephant is your subconscious. And it's kind of like you can want something, you can think about it, but your subconscious and all your emotions, it's your limbic system and everything else is an elephant. It's like trying to steer this thing. And especially if you have a limiting belief that comes out of the subconscious, it's going to really give you trouble. You're going to have a very hard time steering it, but you can start introducing. That's why I journal. That's my main keystone habit in my life, because it's feeding me the story that I want in my head, projecting the future and making a difference in that area and closing that gap. Back to what you were saying about closing the gap. For instance, I want to be even a more loving person. Love is a very important value to me. So I journal a little bit about it every single day. So I have, what is the identity? Who do I want to be? Then what is the virtue? So I have a little grid that I fill in every day. It's pretty simple. This is very Freudian, just so you know. Freud talked about if you can get your shit together with your work and your love, you pretty much are going to get through life pretty well. But I think he left out the category of energy, health, vitality. So that's added on there. So in this grid of 9 squares, I have the identity of energy, the identity of work, and the identity of love. So who's my identity in that? What is the virtue? And then what is the action at the bottom there? So I took up this is kind of an old school one, but I took up the 10,000 steps a day thing for my energy, right? So I walk around with this thing in my pocket. It becomes very obsessive though, but what you measure gets managed. That there's so much truth to that. If you're measuring it, it enters into your subconscious. You're always thinking about it. I find myself running around the kitchen at the end of the day, like, shit, I need 300 more steps to get, I know it's completely ridiculous, but I do it anyway.
Is it fun?
Yeah, it makes me happy.
Yeah.
And it gives me a sense of fulfillment because I track it. I write it down. It's in my journal every day. How many steps did I do yesterday? Does 10,000 steps make you a healthier person? I don't think it makes you a less healthy person. I think it's probably good. It means you didn't sit on your ass all that time. You're actually moving. And it's something I recommend to clients and anyone else that, start thinking about how much movement you have, since they're calling sitting the new smoking. And sitting is the new smoking? Smoking, yes. And I am standing right here. And I remember I got this from you, Stephanie, because you used to stand and work and I would sit slumped and not work as much. So there you go. I started seeing there was more vitality in what you were doing. And I look at now I'm standing in front of a standing desk. I have the padded thing under my feet and to feel better. I feel vital.
So
Closing
Jeff,
the gap.
as you speak, the gap is closing.
Oh my God.
I I feel compelled to ask you something.
Sure.
So like I very much was, I had similar thinking about a lot of stuff. Not exactly the same, but I was looking to optimize, and I used to borrow the habits of the successful people, and I had my morning success ritual,
Right,
and
modeling behavior.
yeah, and I was always working for my 50 minutes and then taking my 10-minute break, which sometimes I still do, by the way, because it works. It's cool, and I had my habits and things. And I find myself less and less interested in trying to be something in the future. Like I've never actually been a huge future planner, but I think I thought I was supposed to be at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel less interested in trying to be something that I'm not. I'm much more curious about seeing what I'm being today. Like, oh, who's Stephanie going to show up as today?
That's an awesome habit that you've developed, and it's really working for you. And it's you're in the moment big time. Like, what's surprising things going to happen in the moment?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, what's your take on me and the change? And I really want to know, like, and the changes that you've seen in me as I've possibly gone even further into the woo than I was before. Or it's a different type of woo, but you have too. So
I have. Yeah. I see you as you could be a little bit more anal retentive in the past. Like, you were very fixated on your routine. Like,
yes.
Oh my God. So
fixated, obsessed,
and
addicted.
I think that gave you some stress, because if your routine got tipped over, naturally you're going to feel some stress. So I think that's been a really healthy thing that I'm sure you still have routines. We all do. But how do they fit into your life, and what are the feelings and thoughts attached to those routines? Letting go the ones that aren't working for you, or beating yourself up if you didn't follow your routine, or thinking less of yourself if you don't follow your routine. Negative, it's funny. A mutual friend of ours talked about, I used to think that I was completely motivated by the stick, the carrot or the stick. Which one is it? Are you, the carrot, the goal, or, I'm going to get my ass kicked if I don't get going, and I always thought it was the stick, but he made such a good point about the fact that the farther away you get from the stick, if you think that's your motivator, the motivation dies because you're farther and farther away. So then you will create chaos in your life to recreate the stick. So you keep coming back to this stress reaction, where I'm not really interested in playing that game anymore.
Yeah. So have you changed for yourself? Like, has your motivation shifted?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I definitely am lower stress, big time, but I can't really nail that down. What exactly made the difference? I'm a regular meditator, so I'm thinking that had to do, if you read all the benefits of meditation, supposedly a thought comes up and you can let it go, and it doesn't have to attach to an emotion, because that's where the suffering, the attachment, right, happens. And I used to catch myself having these conversations that weren't real in my head, and I was having an emotional reaction because the body does not know the difference. It thinks you're in an argument, watching cable TV, watching the news. And I used to watch the news a lot. When I cut cable a while back, a couple of years, oh my God, it was a real serious improvement in my life because of that conversation that was being fed. And I think I completely just jumped off what you asked, but
you did. But that is the nature of life. It's constantly taking us off track.
And, it is, absolutely.
And that used to be your job. It still is your job, isn't it?
Yes,
tangent man. And I'm like, no, come back. This is what
we're
talking
love
about
some
now.
Tangents. Delicious.
They sound like citrus fruits to me.
Tangents. Would you like to buy a box of tangents?
Cool. So tell me about journaling, because this is, I know you've had habits of on and off journaling throughout the time that I've known you.
Right.
What are you doing these days with it, and why is it so important to you?
I've really gotten into this future journaling habit, which if you Google future journaling, there's just tons of information on it. There's a lot of research put into it because I like doing this because it keeps me in a happier, more positive excitement for the future. That's one thing I really like about future journaling. It's a hope generator. And don't underestimate the power of hope and the happy chemicals that are associated. Plus, again, when you future journal and you do it on a regular basis, again, your brain, you're writing like it's already happened. These things, who you want to be, the traits you want about yourself, your health, what have you. So your brain is sort of following you like, oh, okay, we are this. So your neurology will start to follow, and you're creating those new connections in your brain. The plasticity of the brain. They used to think that children had plasticity, but adults did not. Like we were fixed after we grew up. And now they know that's not true. You can grow new connections at any time. So I really enjoy the future journaling because I feel like I'm feeding my brain all this positive, because obviously I'm not planning a horrendous future, so planning a great future, not a delusional one. And I think that's could be a bit of a trap for some people. Not like, for instance, like someone saying, well, I'm going to be an Olympic athlete and they're 60 years old and they've been sitting on the couch for 60 years. You're probably being a little bit delusional at this point because I don't think that's going to work in this physical reality. So you might, you want to lean more towards possibilities. Plus, is that really what you want, or is it just like a cool, fanciful thought? I think emotionally speaking, it's not things we want. We want a state. I want a happy future. I want to feel satisfied. I want to be loved. I want to be healthy. I want to have less worry. There's always going to be a little bit, of course. Mm-hmm. I want a regret-proof life.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about regret.
Yes.
So what causes regret and how do you prevent it?
Okay. You don't want to actually have all regret removed from your life. I need to specify what I'm talking about. There are two types of regret. There's the regret that you just touched the hot stove. And there's a great lesson in that regret. Like, I burned my hand, pain, pain, pain. Boy, I really regret seeing what that glowing red metal felt like. So the lesson is learned. Or I said this thing that, I regret saying that. Oh man, that was dumb. That was insulting. I feel bad. You won't say that again. So that's a useful regret. The regret I'm talking about is what you hear about in nursing homes. You hear it from hospital staffs. You hear about people who are, aging and dying. What are the regrets that give them nightmares and plague them? Is the regret of what if, or I wish I had, or I didn't love enough, or I didn't show my children I loved them, or what if I hadn't been afraid to try more? I played it safe because I was so afraid. Those are the regrets I'm talking about. By optimizing yourself for what you want, by making little steps in that direction, you can definitely reduce that. That's why I talk about the habit of love, being better at love, loving yourself better, loving others better. This virtue, it sounds kind of la happy, but it's super important because, there's no trailer hitch on the hearse. In the end, it's just you going out naked like you came in. So what's really important?
So by doing things to kind of put ourselves on the path towards happiness or more love or whatever it is that we'd like to create in our life, we have movement towards it. So it's not like, I never tried. I never did anything. You were moving towards it, whether or not you consider yourself to have achieved it or not. Is that, so that would reduce or eliminate regret as you see it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, think about like the whole concept of manifesting. Both of us had a reaction to The Secret when we first saw it. I remember going to that party and almost felt like a cult indoctrination when we went to it. And we were in a small group of people like, there were some things about it that just like my bullshit meter went up a little bit. Now, I will say I absolutely believe in manifesting. Just there's more to it than I want the red bike, I want the red bike. There's the red bike, and I'm not saying that never works out that way, but generally it doesn't. It's like we know that now. The secret to the secret is you have to be the person that gets the red bike. So what did the person do? Well, he probably saved money, or probably he made it a point to get this item by moving closer and closer. He didn't just sit in bed and go, I want it, I want it, I want it. I wish it was that easy, but it's not. What was the question again?
I've completely forgotten. So we're just going to move on to the next thing that comes into my mind. It's the way you spin words, Jeffrey. It's hypnotizing. It's mesmerizing.
That's right. Send me your money now.
So this future journaling practice, what is it exactly? You said you do it every day and you write as if it's Tell me about that. I want to know what it is.
A couple of things to set this up that I've sort of attached to my future journaling that other people do as well. I have a little reminder I carry with myself in my wallet here. I don't know if you can actually see this. I don't know if you can see this.
Uh-huh. Ooh.
Memento Mori.
Memento Mori, yes.
Right. It's a Stoic belief that you are going to die. Remember your death. I know, very happy, uplifting thought. The point being, again, this is not a dress rehearsal. So why not go for what makes you happy? Why not be more happy? Why not make today? Because tomorrow could not come. It's like Carpe Diem. Very, very similar saying. But I really, I like that. I like the practicality of Stoicism. It's about a virtuous life. It's about emotional tranquility because we do torture the crap out of ourselves with these stories in our heads. And, most of it's bullshit. So it's like, remember what's important and that you want to meditate on every day. What's really important? Is the red bike really that important? Or is it the feeling you'll have when you have the red bike? I'm going to go with the feeling.
So what is the role of imagining the future in that? If you know that what we're really after is the feeling of happiness or whatever the thing that we want, the relationship, we think it's going to be in the relationship. We want the love. We want the feeling of love, not the relationship, really. Right. We want, sure, I want those things, but what I'm really after is the way that I think it's going to make me feel. So what's the role of journaling about the future when what we're really looking for is something that we can have now?
Good question. There are some aspects of this as well, like your health, for instance. This is a physical thing. By journaling about being, having vitality and great health, it's going to feed your subconscious because the things that contradict that, if you're feeding yourself that message every day, things that contradict that are going to start melting away a little bit. In fact, the best way to end bad habits is to overwhelm them with good habits, essentially. Because, for instance, you start getting really healthy, the habit of smoking is going to become less and less appealing because of the conflict, the internal conflict you're experiencing by getting healthy in all these other areas. It's going to make it easier because your identity's changing. And that's really, that's the heart of any habit is an identity change. That's really the target. That's what you're shooting for. And then the system is what gets you there, and that's, so the goal becomes, a goal is kind of tough because until you make it, you're not making it. You know what I'm saying? You're not making it. You're only there when you're there, but the system is what's going to get you there. And by getting closer and closer, you have little wins, you have micro wins all the time as you get closer, as opposed to, betting all on this goal. That's when the win happens. And I'm a loser till I get to that goal. It's like, no, it's you're winning all along the way when you kind of switch the focus up.
I heard something in what you said, Jeff, that's really interesting to me about how if I want to quit smoking and I don't quit smoking, like I don't even think about the smoking, but I start adding in healthy habits. There's like a cognitive dissonance that's happening now, right? How I am this person, but I smoke here, right? So, and it creates there's a shift in perception about who I am. So what I'm seeing, what I saw in what you said, that's interesting. I saw in what you heard, and what I heard is that it's like kind of a way to show us that we're not who we think we are.
Yeah.
We aren't who we think we are. And I like to go to a place of, I'm not this future person. I'm not this person I think I am today. I'm something else entirely. I have these constantly changing experiences.
Right.
And I have my stories about who Stephanie is. Okay. But those change too. And just knowing that we have stories we're telling that we can change at any moment, that none of them are true, actually. None of them are what I really am. It just frees me up to say, oh, I'm telling a story that doesn't work for me. I could tell one that does. I could tell a new one. What story would I like to be telling about myself?
Right. And absolutely. And as you do this on a regular basis, this isn't a fixed outcome by any stretch of the imagination. It changes because as you change your thinking, obviously your thinking is changing, your experience is changing. So it all can shift somewhat. It's a matter of, what they say with planes are on autopilot. They're constantly adjusting. We want to head to happiness, right? If that's a pretty nebulous, gigantic just feeling. How you get there, there's a lot of roads that are going to get you there. And as you explore that and focus on having a happier life, for instance, you could break that down into little ways that will make you a little bit happier, but that's the ultimate goals you set might shift a little bit along the way. They definitely will.
So here's a question that comes up. And, I have my own way of thinking about this, but I'm really interested to know how you do. So sometimes we have a goal. Let's just say, I want a puppy, right? Like a puppy is going to make me happy, having a puppy. Right. And I recognize there are going to be challenges with a puppy, but okay, I want a puppy. I've dreamed about this puppy for years. It's a beautiful little puppy. I get the puppy and yeah, I feel happy, but then all of a sudden I don't, because this puppy is harder than I thought and I'm not so good at training it. And I have to get up in the middle of the night and take it out and whatever. So it's like the happiness that I thought I was going to get isn't in the puppy once I get it.
Right.
And then I'm disappointed because it's not the puppy. And so like if I'm constantly creating a future, I'm making up a future that I think is going to make myself feel happy and pursuing a goal because I think that's going to make me feel happy. It's not where my happiness lies. So like how do you
in your head? Yes.
So how do you see that? Like, where does our happiness come from?
Well, I think that, we've all connected to external validation in so many areas. We look for and it's true, like it can trigger an emotion. External things trigger emotions, no question. But, I know.
No, wait, right there. Do the external things trigger the emotion, or do I see this water bottle or puppy or sexy person or whatever, have a thought about it, and then feel an emotion based on what I'm thinking?
Yes, and yes, and yes. It's all of the above. It's like we can be triggered from external. We can equally be triggered by our own neurology.
Well, I'm saying because like on a shitty day, I look at this water bottle and I think it needs to be washed. It's so cheap. I really wish I had a better water bottle. Mm-hmm. So I could say that the water bottle triggered that shitty feeling. But on another day, I can look at this water bottle and go, oh my God, what a miracle. This holds water and it, like somebody made this, and isn't it really cool? So did the water bottle trigger that thought? Did that feeling that I had of like, this is a miracle?
This brings up a really good point, actually. Thank you very much. Because in future journaling, the first thing you do to really, if you want to do it to great effect, is you do a little gratitude exercise first, because it's about being in state, right? I mean, this is how we experience joy. We're in a joyful state. We're in a happy state. Gratitude, I'd be the first to admit, when I first heard about gratitude practices, I was like, this sounds so mamby-pamby. And just like, I just wasn't buying it. Probably because part of me was a miserable son of a bitch on some level. I don't know.
It's like just part of you? No, just kidding.
I definitely have shifted over the years. I'm much more optimistic, positive, but I actually started practicing it a couple of years ago, and it's game changing. And also I've seen in multiple psychologists' view on future journaling and such, they talk about the importance of this because it creates the state. And when that positive dopamine serotonin rush you get from thinking about things you're really grateful for. So I do it in the morning, I do it at night. And it is powerful. I get a chill when I do it every time because I know I'm hooking into that state. And then when you introduce a concept or something you want in the future, your brain, it's almost like it's fertilizer for your neurons when you have, it is serotonin and dopamine flowing. So that's why you do that first. And it's really easy doing your journal. I mean, I just jot it down. I'm so grateful for this. I'm so grateful for my home. I'm so grateful that I get to play guitar every day. Like, these are the things that give me so much joy and happiness. And I'm grateful for my health. I have great health, or the love that's in my life. And then I talk about things I want to do in the future. And combining these, it's kind of a neurological hack when you put them together and you do it on a regular basis. And it goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning. Your subconscious is driving all the time, but by feeding it these positive things, you start introducing your own spin, your own narrative into the narrative that's been planted since you were a kid, which a lot of times, unfortunately, is I'm not good enough. I don't deserve this, insert ad nauseum, whatever negative story is in your head. So it's starting to balance things out, because we've let these stories just run for so long in our lives, and they're habitual. So I consider journaling a top keystone habit. Absolutely. By getting in the habit of journaling, basically that ripple is going to affect all other areas. I mean, it's probably one of the best things you can do for clarification in your thinking, for problem solving. You're going to uncover new solutions. Again, it's a hope generator. And Benjamin Franklin talked about that with his basic list of pros and cons of if you want to do something. When we just keep that all in our head, it becomes a confusing mess, and it's mixing around in those stories. And what was it? I think it was Abraham Lincoln said, you want to be able to predict the future, create it. And I like that. That guy was smart.
mm. That's interesting. I just realized as you were saying it that I used to have a regular gratitude practice up until maybe even a year and a half ago. And I didn't even realize I stopped doing it. But it's not true that I've stopped doing it. I just don't do it as a formal practice anymore. I have a tremendous, it's almost like a familiarity with gratitude. So I feel like, for me, every experience we could possibly have is available in this moment. And it's all like on this conveyor belt of thought that's moving by, right? But only some of them are what I'm going to pay attention to, right? Only some of those thoughts are probably going to even reach my consciousness. And for some reason, I have habits of paying attention to certain kinds of thoughts, and I have habits of not noticing other types. And like, I feel so freaking grateful every day, and I don't try. But I think it's a direction that I've learned to look in somehow.
It's a habit. Like, you've wired it in. So now it is in your wiring to have these feelings of gratitude, these thoughts of gratitude, to being grateful every day for the gifts that are in your life. What a powerful habit gratitude is. I mean, it's talk about a drug that's available to you at any time, that's, as opposed to an antidepressant, because it is going to pump those happy chemicals through your brain.
And I think that what I've seen is that I don't always have gratitude thoughts, obviously. Like, sometimes another habit I had, a lifelong habit for a long time, was insecure thoughts. Oh, I shouldn't, questioning myself a lot.
Right.
And so I still have those thoughts sometimes, but now when I have them, I see them and I go, oh, there's insecure thinking. I don't think, because I used to feel insecure back in the day. Oh my God, I get an email from somebody. We used to get those nasty grams that we'd get occasionally. Yeah. I get a nasty gram, and it would sit with me. And I would even forget all about it, but I'd have this feeling lingering. And so it would be like, something's wrong and everything's wrong. And oh my God, I must have done something wrong because whatever. And I could make up a story that it was because of that email. But now when that happens, I know, oh, I just had an insecure thought. That's what I'm feeling. Nothing's wrong. It doesn't mean anything's wrong in my world. And so it just has a shorter half-life. It doesn't stick around as long. And it's a lot easier for me to see something else like gratitude or playfulness or peace or any of the other number of things, purposefulness that I might experience. And I still, so I want to get your take on this one, Jeff. So what do you make of this? some months ago, I was kind of like rolling my eyes because I'm like, oh, I don't want to do these gimmicky routines anymore. I'm so done with it, right? Like, but I still do them when it occurs to me to do them because it's fun and I want to see what happens. And sometimes they're really helpful. And if something in me says, go do this thing, I'll do it. Anyway, so I kind of was like, grumpy, bad attitude about this, but someone had suggested kind of what you're talking about, a future journaling. So to write a letter from my future self to myself, from myself in 90 days, telling Stephanie about all the great things that have happened and be as big and wild and cover all the main areas of my life. Like, this is what's happening with your relationships. This is what happened with your business, right? So I did that. And then you hide the letter and you make a note to yourself, reminder to go and read it in 90 days, right? So I did this and I got the letter and I read it and there were income goals in there, right? And after 90 days, I'm reading it and like, I didn't hit my income goals. And I felt like actually a little bit disappointed. I was like, oh, okay, well, whatever. And I put it aside. Within a couple of weeks, I came within a hair's breadth of making that income goal. Now, I decided I'm going to keep doing this because it's kind of fun. Actually, I really liked what I saw in my letter. So I did this a couple more times. So I'm writing a letter to I'm writing as my future self about what's happened in your life and catching me up on all that stuff, which I won't read until 90 days. And what I saw was that the specific things I talked about, a lot of them didn't happen, but the feelings and the direction was happening. So like I came really close to my income goal in that first one, but the second one and the third one, I didn't. And in fact, I wasn't even close. So like, what's your take on that? So I'm still finding it useful because I love getting a love letter for myself because I write myself this love letter. And for that alone, I will do it just because it's like, oh, Stephanie loves me. How nice. But yeah, what's your take on what's happening? What's going on there?
I mean, that is definitely a version of future journaling in a sense, because your future self is like your North Star. Because this person loves us and cares about us, and we are the child of it in a sense. And it's a way of looking, what would your future tell you to do? Your future self would probably say, why are you sweating this thing? Why are you wasting time being stressed about this? Again, with even the negative habits, your future self would say, is smoking really going along with our healthy version of ourselves? So you are taking on a version of that and experiencing it. This isn't magic. I mean, it can seem like magic. The red bike doesn't just appear. But think about, you've started this now. If you did this on a regular basis and kept doing it, my delusion is that you're probably going to get closer and closer to your goals on a regular basis. I do recall us both reading a book a long time ago about, remember, I'm a money magnet.
Yes.
And we posted our number goals around the house. And we looked at them and we thought about them and we started hitting them. And is it because we stuck paper around the house? No. Basically, though, they were North Stars. They were guiding points that were going into our story, and we were headed in that direction. The compass of that, as opposed to, again, this is someone who loves you. It's you. It's your future you writing a letter to yourself, and it wants you to be in less pain and wants you to get there. And it is a helpful voice. I'm trying to think of the name of the book. I read a while back, but the writer talked about, imagine if you could imagine all the time that there's a film crew following you. Now think about how your life would change. Like, there's a film crew right behind me right now. Like, okay, I'm probably going to, just like when you first start dating someone, you are selling the best version of yourself. You absolutely are. I'm not saying it's not you, but it's the best version cranked up. We don't generally go full, every fault, like right out there on the line. We're showing our best self. In fact, I think that's what they're saying now. I totally think this is smart. If you're going to get married, be with someone for 5 years before you marry them, because you really will get to see, as people get more comfortable, it's going to show all the elements of them, right? That makes sense. And it's still no guarantee, obviously, at that point. But again, completely off the path now. Squirrel.
You were telling me about the power of creating this habit over time. And we were talking about how we used to post our money goals on,
Yes.
I make this much a month, I make that much. And we kept upping them as we would hit them around the
Right.
house. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said in the very beginning of this, I started the habit of journaling out of necessity. Really, if you remember, like we were both working at IBM.
Necessity / desperation.
Right. Absolutely. Because I had never journaled before in my life. So here I am, 32 years old in a spacesuit at IBM, not knowing anyone, and going through some really traumatic, stressful times in my personal life, broke as shit, 2 young kids, and I'm living with my mom. And, I was like, phew, okay. Yeah. Anyway, I was like, this cannot stand. I need to improve my life. My kids need a safe place to live. I can't live with my mother. That's just not working for me. But that's where journaling came, because remember, we didn't really have access to anything in those days at IBM. There was you couldn't go on the internet and look at videos or anything like that. So I started making some pretty big goals at that time and visiting them every single day for 6 months. And I remember the big goal was, and at the time I had no money. I was in debt, lived with my mother. I was making $9.20 an hour. And I remember the goal was, I'm going to own my own home in 6 months. And I closed on that house 5 months, 27 days later. And I look back on that, and that's what hooked me into journaling and then future journaling, because I remember writing about how I'd feel and how proud I would be. And then I remember sitting in my house the first night when I closed, and I just felt amazing. I felt so good about myself. Like, I did this, I made this happen. What else is possible now?
Mm.
So that really hooked me into doing this, because, when we're living in our heads like we are all the time, you need to get it out of your head and be able to look at something external so you can reflect on it the next day and say, what is the next step? Not the staircase. What's just a small thing I can do that's going to get me closer to my happiness, my better health, my better income, love. I remember spending a lot of time thinking about love and wanting to meet someone who would love me and respect me, who I loved. And I remember meditating on that. Remember that love yourself like your life depends on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, that's, that little book, that was such a quick read and it sounded so goofy, but it had power in it because it kept bringing you back to that North Star, that I love myself, that I respect myself. And, self-care, as we know, has become a really known thing in the last 10, 20 years, but it's super important that we take care of ourselves, because we got to love ourselves more than anyone else.
Mm. What I'm taking from this is that this, like, future journaling or some of these gratitude practices and things we're talking about are just they're really beautiful ways to see a new possibility when maybe we've been in a habit of something that hasn't been working for us. And it doesn't really matter how you recognize that.
Right.
There are lots of different ways to recognize it, but I see it as, I can hear your excitement when you talk about it, and knowing that you've had challenges with feeling overwhelmed in the past by, overwhelmed with your own thinking and attention differences.
Deficits. We're not going to say
no. I do not see it as a deficit. It is a difference.
It is. It's got its own superpower in its own way.
Totally. Yeah. I came to rely on you for that you would notice everything that was going on all at once. And maybe it would distract you sometimes.
Yeah.
But there was so much information that you were able to see that I would miss. So I didn't have to think about it. But this idea, I can totally understand how, the idea of breaking things down into these tiny habits, or, just setting yourself up in the direction of what you want. There is absolutely a power in focused intention over time. And if I show up every day and I think about, and I still do these things, I do them in different ways. Like, I track my income and I track the things that I know move the needle. How many people I talk to, how many coaching conversations, how many proposals I make, what money I'm bringing in, the things that I'm doing. And I don't track it obsessively or have a lot of fear around it, but I do want it to be in my awareness, because it kind of trains in my it's part of the information I need in order to create what it is I'd like to go for.
That's, that saying that if what gets measured gets managed. I mean, there's been a lot of debate on actually who, I think they thought it was Peter Drucker, but I don't believe it actually was. But there's real truth to it. I mean, I noticed even with, I like leisure. I'm not going to say I don't. I do, but I exercise pretty regularly. And I noticed that when I put a dry erase board up in the room where I have my weights and just wrote down what I did each time, I'm doing more now. It just seems to work out that way because I'm thinking about it and it's bringing me back into that state. And why am I doing this? Is to be stronger and healthier, live long and leave a good looking corpse.
Still one of my, I don't think I say it as much as I used to anymore, but when somebody wants to do something and they're really struggling with it because of willpower, I'm like, well, how could you make it inevitable? How could you make it easy that it just happens? And they might still not do it. But it's kind of cool to see that there are certain things that if we do, we just pay attention to it. And I think if we pay attention to it and really pay attention to it, not pay attention and beat ourselves up about it.
Right.
Like, oh, I haven't exercised. Oh, I'm still smoking. Oh, whatever I'm having, because that's actually perpetuating it. But noticing, oh, I'm doing that smoking thing again. Oh, I'm doing that insecure thinking thing again. Okay. And like just being aware of it, being with it, that's more of like the meditative state. As soon as I really see myself doing it, I will stop at some point. I will. And I've seen that with people too. It takes so a lot of times I'm either beating myself up about the thing that I don't want to be doing as I see myself doing it, or trying to avoid seeing it. And neither one of those works very well for change. But what does is like, hey, okay, this is happening. I don't have to do that. I don't have to think that like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And in basic habit change 101, unattractive versus attractive, like making something unattractive could be just physically moving it out of the room, taking snacks out of the house so you don't eat them. That's just, it works. It's very basic, but it does work. But obviously we can't take our brain out and leave it in the garage at night. So changing your thinking, again, back to by feeding yourself more positive stuff. And I'm not just talking blowing smoke up your own ass, or maybe I am. If it gets the result, does it really matter? There's been a lot of back and forth on, does it really work? Just saying these positive things, every day, like we talk about with, I love myself, like my life depends on it, that whole, I love myself. But they do work, but it's not magic. Again, it's trying to change the winds so your ship slightly changes course in the direction you want it to go by feeding it the positive things.
I really like that message, Jeff, that you're sharing, which is like, make it small and easy and just change it a little bit and just shift one step at a time, do the next thing. It's very reassuring rather than trying to do the whole thing, which can also be inspiring to go for something really big and audacious and crazy and see if I can pull it off. I like that too.
Oh, it's exciting.
Yeah, but it's always that in this moment, what can I do in this moment? And also noticing that whatever it is that I think I'm going to get from that thing, I've already got it.
Yes.
I actually, that sense of security or accomplishment or love, or like what I'm really, really looking for is right here. And I also want to create cool stuff, and I want to do stuff, and I want to go for something really big, and I want to try it and see if I can pull it off, because I don't know if I can. And that's really fun.
And that's the wild thing. And it's kind of our brain, it's a feedback loop, right? It's a constant feedback loop. But if you can get the feeling first, your odds of being able to physically bring this into reality increase dramatically, as opposed to, I'm just going to grit it out and do it. But if you can somehow get yourself more in that state, that's manifesting when you can make that happen by focusing on that feeling of what that's going to be like. This is going to be, thinking about a home where my kids have a backyard to play in it. What is that going to feel like? And it's like, so that became the guiding North Star to make this happen. And all the pieces that fell in line along the way that really the odds were very against happened. But I think it just meant that my brain was hyper focused on finding these avenues, because there's many avenues, developing. We're talking about willpower before, and willpower is flaky, man. It's like counting on willpower there's ways to increase it a little bit. Like it's been measured. We have more willpower in the morning, for instance, after we get up. By afternoon, forget about it. We don't have much. We only have so much. There is a limited amount of it. Developing the habit of grit is a really good habit to work on. And like grit, what is grit? It's like you get all these feelings of like, okay, eating, I'm hungry, I want a snack. Realizing that you are in control of that. Like, I'm a big fan of fasting. Intermittent fasting is a big part of my life. Fasting has dramatically...
Wait, I have to interrupt you just for a second, Jeff, because back when, when we were married, that would have been the last thing that you would do.
Absolutely.
Anything that caused you discomfort, you were like, I'm not interested.
Right.
Even if it's like a chiropractic visit afterward, I feel grumpy. I don't want to do it. Fasting, Are you kidding? I don't want to be hungry. That sucks. I won't do it. Okay. So that was where you were.
Absolutely.
So now talk about fasting.
All right. So again, pain is the greatest teacher, right? I mean, it really can motivate you. I was super ill like 5 or 6 years ago. Couldn't figure out how to treat it. Doctors were really not giving, no, we'll just take your gallbladder out. Then that won't hurt anymore. It's like, but I want to keep my gallbladder, so I went through all this, a year of a lot of money, a lot of tests, not a lot of help. And then randomly watching a video on Facebook.
So the diagnosis that they came up with was idiosyncratic pancreatitis, right? Which means we don't know why, but you have inflammation of the pancreas.
Gallbladder disease.
Yeah.
That's like a general word for it, because they didn't really have an answer. And then watching a video on these longevity scientists and a TED talk. And I was like, I never really considered it, but out of pain, I was willing to try it finally, because I was totally negative on it my whole life up to that point. Like, don't eat? Are you kidding me? What else you got? And I got immediately good results. I started feeling better almost like 2 days into it. I started feeling better when I hadn't felt good in like a year and a half or something. So that was a huge change in my life. But also I kind of enjoy, it's totally sick, right? I don't know. I enjoy the feeling of stretching that out. I remember when I did a 5-day fast, and actually after the third day, I wasn't even hungry. I felt so good. I felt so sharp and so tuned in to my body. And so I like that feeling, and that develops that feeling of grit of not, because I think we are addicted to comfort. We are addicted to distraction and addicted to comfort. And these things pull us away from what we really want in the end. It's like you have a choice. Are you more invested in entertainment, or are you more invested in being actualized and waking up feeling good? Like, there's your choice, right? You can stay up and watch movies and drink a bottle of wine and every night and be entertained and distracted. I've certainly done my share of that. Or do I want to feel really good in the morning? And I know the only way I'm going to feel really good when I get up is to control my bookends of the day, my PM and my AM. And the only way to have a great AM is to have a good PM. There's just no other way around it. That's me getting to bed. I go to bed so much earlier these days. You remember, I used to stay up late. Mm-hmm. I had this bizarre thinking that I was going to miss out on something. Like, what was I going to miss out on? More bad TV? What? I don't know. I had this bizarre belief, and it was left over from my childhood. But that was a habit I changed and has really rewarded me in my life, was starting to value more waking up, really feeling good in the morning. Because we lose control during the day. That's just the reality. We can control the AM and the PM, and then control during the middle of the day.
I don't know, man. You're gonna have to give me some of what you got, because I don't think I'm controlling morning, noon, night. Oh.
Well, you have more choice. I'm not going to say you fully do. You can choose when to go to bed. Usually, you can choose what you do in the evening. I'm just saying, during the day, we have a lot more input in the middle of the day. Like emails coming in. Life is stepping into our little bubble and pulling us and bouncing us around, where when you first wake up, you have some control what you do first thing in the morning, because unless you go right into email, which is not a good idea, I don't think, delay that, or start watching the news or something in the morning. Now you have input coming in externally. It's going to change your state. It's not really setting you up. It might set you up to be pissed off, or like your news feed on Facebook, and you're not on Facebook these days. So good for you.
I'm not. Isn't that interesting? So as we kind of start to draw our time together now,
Okay.
for now, to a close, if you think about, can you think about the person or the people who you'd really like to help with what you're doing right now, help them optimize and regret-proof their life? Can you think of that as a specific or just who they are?
Absolutely, because I think most people have this picture in their head of who they think they are, and they think about who they know they're capable of being, but for some reason, they're not able to close that gap at all.
Yeah.
And I can help them with.
Yeah. What do you want to tell them? Like, what's the message they most need to hear?
The message is to not beat yourself up. You're like everyone else. We all walk around with this. And it doesn't have to stay that way. With just some really small adjustments and actions, you could start closing that gap a little bit. And my God, your life will change immediately. Like we talked about, when your thoughts start changing and you start feeling good about the things you're doing, it opens up channels to different things you didn't even know were possible.
Cool. And
I just want to say, that's why I named my business Monday Changes Everything, because, we have such a shitty thought about Monday in this country. Like Monday, most heart attacks take place Sunday night because people are obsessing about Monday. And so I want to take back Monday.
It's a Monday revolution.
That's right.
Ladies and gentlemen.
I love on Monday. I'm going to love all over it.
So where can people find and connect with you?
They can find me on mondaychangeseverything.com.
Cool.
Click on it. Make an appointment with me. We can talk about this.
Cool.
You want to.
You're so persuasive. How could they resist? Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. This has been great fun.
Thanks for having me, Steph.
Thanks so much for joining me for today's Wildspire conversation. If you'd like to receive a weekly Wildspire email from me filled with inspiring stories, unmarketing experiments, tips for playing your way to impact and income without the hustle and hype, insights from my spiritual business journey, and more, go to theawakenedbusiness.com/Wildspire. Until next time, may you know yourself as the gorgeous wild creation you are.